protection. You keep washing over me. For you are endless ocean, bottomless sea. 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 All those angels, they are swimming in this ocean, and they still can't find no shore. Day and night, night and day, they keep seeing new signs of your face. You are endless ocean, bottomless sea. You are endless ocean, bottomless sea.
Good morning. Welcome to Watershed. We're so glad that you are here. Want to welcome those of you who are joining us on Facebook or YouTube, and give you a second just to say hello to your other friends in the online space. If you're here in person, I want to invite you to stand. We're going to begin this morning by singing together. Again, God, I'm begging, please, again, I need you. Oh, I need you. Walking down these desert roads, water for my thirsty soul. I need you. Oh, I need you.
Your love and kindness is like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like the sound of a symphony to my ears, like holy water on my skin.
just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. I just want to know your grace. God, I need it every day. It's the only thing that ever really helps me be the change. Loving kindness. It's like sweet, sweet honey on my lips, like a sound of a symphony to my ears, like holy water. Your loving kindness, sweet, sweet honey on my lips, sound of a symphony to my ears, holy water on my skin, like holy water on my skin, like holy water.
Thank you so much for singing with us this morning. I want to give you a second to greet the people around you. Say hello, smile, and then we'll continue singing together.
darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Oh, nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Nothing can take my hallelujah. Shadows will fade, darkness will break. I'll keep on singing your praise.
Oh, what can take away my hallelujah? No darkness can contain my hallelujah. Your love has made a way. My hallelujah, my hallelujah. Oh, what can take away my hallelujah? No darkness can contain my hallelujah. Your love has made a way. My hallelujah, my
Y'all can have a seat. Good morning. Welcome. Decent. My name is David. I am one of the pastors here on staff. I just want to extend an additional welcome to you this morning and get you up to speed on a few things that are happening here. Ooh, I got louder at Watershed. First things first, this week on Tuesday is the kickoff of something that I'm really excited about that I get to do called Reclamation. Reclamation is you know what, it's a class. I'm just going to call it what it is. It's a class. And one of the few classes we actually have here. We're very discussion oriented. We want to hear from you. And I want to hear from you at Reclamation. But mostly I want you to hear from me. But also this time I have a special guest, my good friend Lewis, different Lewis than our new worship pastor. We're collecting, what's the plural of Lewis? Louis? Yeah. Anyway, they spell it different, so it's okay. Anyway, so Lewis and I, different Lewis, Scottish Lewis, are going to be co-teaching. The topic of this Reclamation class is the gospel. So we're going to be exploring maybe ways that what we understood the gospel to be growing up doesn't really make sense or work anymore, and what are some ways to reimagine, recontextualize, translate, or reclaim this idea. Now, that starts this Tuesday. Originally, Preface was going to start this Tuesday, but just to accommodate a handful of schedules, we're actually going to bump Preface 2 weeks. So Preface, if you're not familiar with it, if you're new to Watershed, newer, or honestly, if you haven't taken Preface in like 2 years or less, or maybe you took it 2 months ago, but you had a good time and you want to go again, Preface is for you. But really, it's an opportunity to learn a little bit more about who we are as a faith community, and crucially, I think an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about who you are as a person who may or may not have some kind of faith, and share that story, your journey with others. It's very communal, not a class. And you guys get to, kind of go on that journey together. And so that starts, let's see my math here, so the 21st, multiples of 7. So in 2 weeks, 2 Tuesdays from now, for both Reclamation and Preface, childcare is provided. But part of the reason we want you to sign up is because if you need childcare, you need to tell us so we know how many background checked and very well-equipped teenagers to book to watch your kids. So both of those are on the horizon. If you have any questions, you can always shoot us an email. Additionally, speaking of childcare, but more than that, the Garden, which is what we call our family ministry space, including Shed students for our middle school and high schoolers, and Greenhouse for our kids, are looking for volunteers. Now, that's always going to be true. This is a church. There are a few truisms at any church, regardless of their denomination or theology or anything. And one of those is that the family ministry always needs volunteers. Just full stop. So that's true of us, but Blair has asked to sort of make a particular push towards our parents and caregivers. We would love more of our parents and caregivers to raise their hand, metaphorically, you don't have to do it right now, raise their hand and dive in, commit to maybe one Sunday a month, just because we would love to have more of y'all helping out. So yes, if you're not a parent or caregiver, you are still invited, I promise, but kind of a particular push to our parents and caregivers. If you need more information, or if, I've convinced you, which could be possible, go ahead and just follow that link through the QR code. You can also find this on our app and website. But we would love, love, love to see more of our parents and caregivers. No guilt at all, but diving in. So please do that. Couple of justice or liberation updates. Many of you know that here at Watershed we have a handful of, we call them liberation partners. These are either people or organization who we think are doing important work locally and abroad, who we are, sort of putting our stamp on, putting sort of like the weight of our community behind. And so one of our liberation partners, many of you know, Tommy Allgood. Tommy, this spring, April 21st through 23rd, we actually have a lot going on that weekend. That's the next ICU Talks as well. But wanted to draw your attention to this opportunity that Tommy is co-leading with his good friend, the historian Letty Gore, who you see her picture up there as well. But this is a legacy trip down to Alabama to the National Museum for Peace and Justice. It's an opportunity to learn from two brilliant people about our nation's history, particularly a part of our history that we often like to sort of brush under the rug, and that's our history with racial oppression and slavery. And so you will be in great hands on this experience between Letty and Tommy, and it is an amazing opportunity just to learn, to be challenged, to experience something. Crucially, I want to point out, not a vacation, all right? So not a vacation. So it's an investment. It's an investment in both the work that they're doing. It's an investment in the work that you may want to be doing in your own life. It's an investment financially, quite frankly, but it's a powerful experience that I can wholeheartedly endorse for you. So if you follow that link, you're actually not signing up. You're putting your information for an info form, and either Tommy or myself will reach out to you, answer any questions that you might have. There's some financial aid opportunities if you need them, but I would really, really encourage anyone who has even an inkling of interest to explore this a little. And then in addition to that, many of you know we also have an ongoing relationship with Bethany Christian Services, which is a foster and adoption agency here in the United States. And in particular, the program that they have that temporarily houses children who have been separated, migrant and refugee children who are separated from their families and caregivers at the border. It temporarily gives them a home to stay in until they can be reunited with their kin or with their guardians and caregivers. And so one of the ways that we partner with Bethany is we provide luggage, carry-on luggage. The kids, when they are reunited, sometimes they have to get on a plane. Sometimes they have to fly to a different state to be reunited with their families. And so we provide the luggage that they put literally all of their belongings in. It's been just a really meaningful way to come alongside this organization. We keep asking them, is there something better, something different? And they say, no, we need the luggage. It's kind of become like a cultural a point of excitement. Like when new kids come in, the kids who are still in the program are like, hey, look, you know, when you get reunited, you're gonna get this luggage, and it's gonna be yours, and it's just really something that they look forward to. So you can follow that link. It goes straight to our Amazon wish list, and you know how to use Amazon, because it's the 21st century. So we're actually going to have more information on this partnership in the near future. You're going to get to hear from someone at Watershed who is has been trained to actually be one of the host homes for these children. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, collecting the luggage is just a massive, massive ask for the organization, something that we want to continue to help them with. So that's about it as far as things we want to draw your attention to. Just as a reminder, the Watershed calendar on our app has all sorts of both educational and social opportunities for y'all to get together with one another, meet new people, and so we always want to encourage you to check that out. And then lastly, just as a reminder, everything we talked about, both supporting our liberation partners, bringing guests in. We actually have some pretty exciting guests that probably in the next couple weeks we're going to start announcing over the next maybe 3 or 4 months. A lot of really interesting people that we're bringing in that you're going to get to meet and hear from and learn from. But none of that's possible without so many of you just sort of taking ownership of the work we do here financially. As we tell you each week, our goal is always to bring in 5 new units, individuals or families of reoccurring giving. We've hit our goal, thank you, for both January and February. This is our first Sunday in March. So once again, looking to add 5 just new units of reoccurring giving, because like we say every week, that helps us plan ahead. It helps us know what's coming in so that we can maybe take risks, bring on a new justice or liberation partner, dream a little bit about where we want to take our staff or who we might want to bring in, like as a special guest speaker or something like that. So as always, thank you. Secure ways to do that via that QR code, app, website, boxes in the bag. You guys know the drill. Good to see you. I've talked too long. I'm going to leave. You guys have fun.
We always love hearing from you, David. When I first started doing individual therapy, I had a therapist who would say, pretty classic question, like, tell me how that makes you feel, right? I'd describe some situation. How's that make you feel? Every single time for probably the first 6 months, I was like, I think, and then I would try to say a feeling word. And the more we got into it, the more I realized that there was this disconnection from my body that I learned at a very early age. I was taught to distrust my body, my feelings, what was happening inside. That trust was supposed to be put externally. And so we're in this series. It's a new series that we're going to hear from Cedric this morning, and he's going to unpack some things that I think are really important. The title of this series is The Divine in Me, and I spent my whole life trying to figure out the divine. I spent my whole life trying to understand who God is and where God is and what God's doing, and I had very little concern for myself, very little exploration into me. And I've talked with a lot of people who have that similar experience. They're disconnected from themselves. So one of the things that we do here is we play music. I was having a conversation with a friend last night, and he said, there's these places where you don't really have the right word for an emotion. And I was telling him there's a lot of research that says that music kind of fills some of those gaps. And so we're going to do a song that kind of speaks to a little bit of that. But maybe there's space this morning for you to reconnect, even just for a few moments, with your body, with yourself.
Out of the question to see or be seen, caught under a landslide of all these memories. Getting back to my body, getting out of my head. It's been a long time chasing the making of a good life. So here I am on a beautiful day, looking out the window, all the traffic on the east side of LA. Overthinking as usual, about the right things to say. I guess I just get nervous when things are going okay. But whatever happens, it's probably gonna happen anyway. Drive yourself crazy, reading the news. It's too much information, we got the information blues. It's out of the question to see or be seen. Caught under a landslide of all these memories. Getting back to my body, getting out of my head. It's been a long time chasing and making of a good life. If I told you then what you could have been, but you have turned around, you have listened. If I told you then who it could have been, but you have turned around, you have even listened. If I told you then what you could have been, you have turned around, you have even listened. If I told you then what you could have been, you have turned around, you have even listened.
Good morning. My name is Cedric Lundy, and I am one of the teaching pastors here at Watershed, and I really like chocolate chip cookies. But here's the problem. The problem with chocolate chip cookies is that the market of chocolate chip cookies is flooded with a plethora of mediocre cookies. I see I'm not the only one. Okay, I'm feeling all the amens in here. All right. Yes, yes. See, at the risk of alienating people even more from ever inviting me over to their house for dinner because I come across as a complete food snob, allow me to explain my issue with chocolate chip cookies. When I was a kid, we had a family friend that made the best chocolate chip cookies. Their family lived about a mile away from my family, and in the summer sometimes I would hop on my bike to go over and play like with the other kids, their kids, but also hoping that their mom made chocolate chip cookies. They were really that good. They were just the perfect level of softness because y'all miss me with that crunchy mess. Some of you are old enough to remember when Chips Ahoy released the soft batch, which in my opinion was an admission. It still does have that really weird aftertaste, though. Those Chips Ahoy cookies, just, In this current era of craft everything, there are definitely cookies that hit the mark, like those Sweet Girl cookies that they sell at some of the markets around here. But, you know, that's going to cost you at least $4 minimum, and I'm not trying to spend that kind of money on cookies all the time. So occasionally I'll treat myself, but I'm not trying to live like that. So much of what is out there, it's just not quite right. So I decided that if I can't join them, then I'm going to beat them at their own game. and save some money in the process by making cookies from scratch. I did not get out of the park on my first try. It took multiple attempts with mixed results before I finally nailed what I was looking for. I had a base recipe and started to tinker with it, change the size of the eggs, the ratio of brown sugar to white sugar, adjustments to the bake time, even adjustments to how long I let it cool on the pan, because you don't want the bottom to get too crisp, too hard, right? You got to move it over onto, something where the air can get underneath it and it cools just right, so it's like the perfect consistency, right? All those different things. I even went with the metric system and weighed my ingredients, because while communism has some faults, at least they get accurate measurements in the kitchen. When I finally got what I wanted, I wrote down my recipe. But of course, it's one thing for me to enjoy the cookie I made. The final threshold of whether or not the cookies were par excellence is sharing them with others. So, come here. Tell me what you think. Now, I gotta say, I did accidentally on this batch add a little bit too much vanilla. But go ahead, knock yourself out. Head nod. I'm not gonna keep moving until you give me some feedback. All right. Good. Yeah. So you see what I'm talking about? See, those came out of the oven at about 8:15, so 2 hours, 15 minutes ago. So they're still got that nice little bit of gooiness that the chocolate hasn't solidified, where it's just kind of dripping. I almost got some in my beard this morning driving here, which wouldn't have been quite as bad as the honey from the toast I had earlier this week, but that got in my beard. But thankfully I hadn't showered yet, so I only had to do that once. But anyway, I digress. Now, just to be clear, I didn't make anything new. I did not do something that had not been done before me. There are countless individuals who took the basic recipe of chocolate chip cookies and gave it an upgrade, if you will. Personally, I think anyone who adds nuts to a chocolate chip cookie gave it a significant downgrade. I don't have anything against nuts. I love nuts by themselves. But I want a cookie, not a breakfast bar. Yeah, I said it. I'm not about to bring the torches or shout heretic on folks who add nuts to their chocolate chip cookies. I'm just not about to bangs with them cookies. You feel me? I'm just going to let them be great and continue to enjoy my cookies while continuing to explore how I can make them better and not add too much vanilla next time, or make other tasty versions. So sometimes I make chocolate chip cookies where I get some Oreo cookies and mash them up and mix them in with the batter. And I even found it's better to crush them in a bag than put them in a little blender, because then it gets them too crumbly. You want those nice little chunks of the Oreo cookie and some of that cream in the middle just to really stand out in the cookie. And then of course I was like, well, now they made those mint Oreo cookies, because I love me some mint. Throw that in there, because favorite drink, mojito. But I digress again. Mix that in with it. And then also I've done white chocolate and cranberry cookies. I know cranberry is bordering on the breakfast bar side, but the white chocolate and the cranberries go really good together. But probably my best one are my double chocolate chip Mexican spice cookies. Yeah. Those ones will have you slapping your mama, your grandmama, anybody who ever gave you a cookie before, they getting slapped. That's how good those ones are. All right. Now, I imagine at this point, 6.5 minutes into my message, some of you are thinking to yourselves, I got up early Sunday morning, come listen to this fool talk about chocolate chip cookies. Well, that's just it. I'm not talking about chocolate chip cookies. But I am talking about chocolate chip cookies, but I'm not actually talking about chocolate chip cookies. Again, in this series we are launching this week, The Divine in Me, we are exploring different aspects of the faith that maybe some of us were raised in, that we found what we were given not to be quite what we were looking for, that it was maybe just a little bit off, that the faith expressions that many of us were raised in had very strict constraints, a very fixed framework or recipe, if you will. Wavering from that recipe and way of doing things would often lead to a backlash. It was seen as dangerous at best and heretical at worst. It was a slippery slope into what can't even be considered a cookie anymore, or worse, would make the eater of the cookie sick and die. And yet at Watershed, we have probably found ourselves here because we dared to go from questioning whether or not there was a better take on the chocolate chip cookie. In some cases, we questioned if the cookie we had been given and was used to actually was all that good to begin with. So here we are, deconstructing the thing entirely and beginning the process of creating a more nuanced, complex, and less toxic expression of Christian faith and understanding of our relationship with the divine and with Christ. So, Christian faith deconstruction, right? It's become this really kind of popular thing that we talk about. It's been the topic of different articles from very progressive to very conservative Christians. And here's the reality. This is nothing new. It is absolutely, positively nothing new. Christian faith deconstruction of the last decade plus could be traced back to Brian McLaren's book published in 2001 entitled A New Kind of Christian. It was the first book in what turned out to be a trilogy. The first book got some awards and was generally well received, but with each book in the trilogy, McLaren tested the boundaries of what was considered fair play when it came to faith and doubt. Eventually, he became persona non grata in the evangelical circles. He was the poster child of the dangers of postmodernism. It probably wasn't until the 2016 U.S. presidential election and the reckoning of evangelical support of Trump that deconstruction became a word on the tip of everyone's tongue, as many of the disillusioned left evangelical spaces en masse. Now, I could spend a lot of time breaking this one down, but I'm pretty sure we all lived through it. And in some ways, we still are. It's like that cookie that has way too much baking soda. You ever make that mistake? And it just leaves you with just this chalky, right? However, the first point or big idea I want to make this morning, again, is that Christian faith, in particular, Northern Hemisphere, Western world Christianity, deconstruction is nothing new. The launching of Christianity, or following in the way of Jesus, was a deconstruction of ancient Judaism. The entirety of the Sermon on the Mount is a series of pronouncements of Jesus saying, "You have heard it said, but I tell you," or "I say to you." And he says this about who is blessed and who might not be blessed as blessed as their circumstances suggest. He says this about anger and lust and divorce, making oaths, retaliation, and enemies. So even from the very beginning, what launched Christianity in the first place was a deconstruction. But I'm going to give you a brief history of some of the significant deconstruction moments in the history of Christianity. The first one being the Great Schism of 1054. And the Great Schism of 1054 led to the separation of Western and Eastern Christians into Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox Christians. The Great Schism came about due to a complex mix of religious disagreements and political conflicts. One of the many religious disagreements between the Western or Roman and Eastern Byzantine branches of the church had to do with whether or not it was acceptable to use unleavened bread for the sacrament of communion. That's right, they were arguing about bread. Other objects of religious dispute included the exact wording of the Nicene Creed and the Western belief that clerics should remain celibate. These religious disagreements were made worse by a variety of political conflicts, particularly regarding the power of Rome. Rome believed that the Pope, the religious leader of the Western Church, should have authority over the Patriarch. The religious authority of the Eastern Church, Constantinople, disagreed. Each church recognized their own leaders, and when the Western Church eventually excommunicated Michael Cerullius and the entire Eastern Church, the Eastern Church retaliated by excommunicating the Roman Pope Leo III and the Roman Church with him. While the two churches have never reunited over 1,000 years after their split, the Western and Eastern branches of Christianity came to more peaceable terms in 1965. It only took 900 years. Pope Paul VI and the Patriarch, I can't pronounce his name, I'm going to completely butcher it, lifted the long-standing mutual communication decrees made by their respective churches. So that was just the first deconstruction, if you will. Then, of course, there's the one that maybe many of us in this room are more familiar with from personal experience, whether or not we recognize the history of it. But that would be the Protestant Reformation. Notice, it's funny because I grew up in Protestantism, and it was a long time before anyone ever pointed out, you do know the root word of Protestant is protest? The Protestant Reformation began in Wittenberg, Germany on October 31st, 1517. Maybe that's why they didn't want to participate in Halloween, but anyway. When Martin Luther, a teacher and a monk, published a document he called Disputation on the Power of Indulgences, or 95 Theses, the document was a series of 95 ideas about Christianity that he invited people to debate with him. These ideas were controversial because they directly contradicted Catholic Church's teachings. Luther's statements challenged the Catholic Church's role as intermediary between people and God, specifically when it came to the indulgence system, or basically how people were forgiven of sins, which in part allowed people to purchase a certificate of pardon for the punishment of their sins. Luther argued against the practice of buying and earning forgiveness, believed instead that salvation is a gift of God and that he gives to those who have faith. Luther's objections to indulgence system paved the way for other challenges to the Catholic doctrine throughout Europe. 500 years later, the Protestant Reformation can be credited for more than 10,000 Protestant denominations, according to conservative estimates, which groups all of the non-denominational churches into one group. Next, you have the Black Church. The Black Church in America began as a rejection of America's unique brand of slaveholder Christianity, because in all the things that Martin Luther decided to point out, the one he didn't give objection to was the transatlantic slave trade. Go figure. James Cone describes it very well in his seminal book, Black Liberation Theology. At first, white Christian slaveholders in America did not allow the slaves to be baptized because Christianity supposedly enfranchised them. But because the white church was having few converts amongst blacks, it proceeded to assure slaveholders that baptism had nothing to do with civil freedom. In fact, many white ministers assured slave masters that Christianity would make for better slaves because it was a disembodied form of religion. But I digress. Swift assurances were given that the master began to introduce Christianity to blacks, confident that it would make blacks more obedient. But many blacks were able to appropriate white Christianity to their own condition by turning it into a religion of liberation. The emergence of the invisible institution, or the Black Church, or the secret church, among the slaves of the South, the organization of the African Methodist Episcopal Church in 1816, and the African Methodist Zion Church in 1821, together with other black independent religious institutions and their involvement in the anti-slavery movement, show that black religionists did see through the fake white Christianity of the period. For the pre-Civil War black church, salvation involved more than a longing for the next life. Being saved was also a present reality that placed persons in a dimension of freedom so that earthly injustice became intolerable. And this is just the first three of major movements of Christian faith deconstruction over the course of 2,000 years of church history. a history that begins with a departure from ancient Judaism. And with that bit of historical perspective, we would do well to humble ourselves enough to act like we are to stop acting like we're brand new, or if we're acting like we're brand new with this, to get a little bit of historical perspective with this whole deconstruction thing. If anything, we are simply keeping it moving within the tradition we inherited. But not only is Christian faith deconstruction not new, we should also recognize that every time it has led to something new. That is the crux, in my opinion, of Jesus' interaction with Nicodemus in John chapter 3, from which we often get just John 3:16 pulled and presented to us, but we rarely ever get the whole context of the entire conversation. So again, here's this man. He's, I'll just read the verse. There is a man of the Pharisees sect, Nicodemus, a prominent leader among the Jews. So he knows what time it is with what the expectations, what the rules are, how you're supposed to practice it, all that stuff. He's part of the establishment. Late one night, so he's visiting Jesus in the darkness of the cover of light, right? So he knows how dangerous this is amongst the other folks who also uphold the religious institution of Judaism in his day. And when he visited Jesus, he said, "Rabbi, we know you're a teacher straight from God. No one could do all the God-pointing, God-revealing acts you do if God weren't in on it." And Jesus said, "You're absolutely right. Take it from me. Unless a person is born from above," or as it says in many texts, born again, "it's not possible to see what I'm pointing to God's kingdom." "How can anyone," said Nicodemus, "be born who has already been born again and grown up? You can't re-enter your mother's womb and be born again. What are you saying with this born from above talk?" And Jesus said, "You're not listening. Let me say it again. Unless a person submits to this original creation, the wind hovering over the water creation, or if you think back to the Genesis 1 passage that Jesus is referring to, the spirit that hovered over the waters before the voice of God spoke all of what we know as creation into existence according to that narrative. It's not possible to enter God's kingdom. When you look at a baby, it's just that, a body you can look at and touch. But the person who takes shape within is formed by something you can't see and touch. The spirit becomes a living spirit. So don't be surprised when I tell you that you have to be born from above, out of this world, so to speak. You know well enough how the wind blows this way and that. You hear it rustling through the trees, but you have no idea where it comes from or where it's headed next. That's the way it is with everyone, born from above by the wind of God, the Spirit of God. And Nicodemus asked, "What do you mean by this? How does this happen?" See, he's still thinking in very concrete black and white terms, like an adolescent who hasn't quite hit puberty and the abstract thinking has started to kick on, right? I have a 12-year-old. So that's kind of where I'm at these days, fluctuating between, because I like to use all these metaphors and all that kind of stuff. And, at the beginning of the sermon, she'd be still stuck on me talking about cookies. But anyway, it's par for the course. I can't imagine what I was like thinking back to then. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, though, again, he is sitting here trying to understand what Jesus is talking about. Because for him, so much of how you remain part of what God has been doing through the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, had very much to do with the concrete physical act of circumcision and the very concrete act of sacrifices. So for him, this born again talk is a complete departure from anything he's ever heard or accustomed to. And Jesus said, "You're a respected teacher of Israel, and you don't know the basics? Listen carefully. I'm speaking sober truth to you. I speak only of what I know by experience. I give witness only to what I have seen with my own eyes. There is nothing secondhand here, no hearsay. Yet instead of facing the evidence and accepting it, you procrastinate with questions. If I tell you things that are plain as the hand before your face and you don't believe me, what use is there in telling you of things you can't see, the things of God? No one has ever gone up into the presence of God except the one who came down from the presence, the Son of Man. In the same way that Moses lifted up the serpent in the desert so people could have something to see and then believe, it is necessary for the Son of Man to be lifted up, and everyone who looks up to him, trusting and expectant, will gain a real faith, eternal life. And then you get John 3:16. But even then, it goes on to say even more after that. All that being said, what Jesus is describing to Nicodemus is not about admitting that he is a sinner and separated from God. Jesus is using a metaphor, a word picture of being born again to prompt Nicodemus to no longer build a life with the divine that is centered on oversimplified adherence to the law and to be reborn or rebuild a life that is actually centered on a life of abundance of life. Now, that's not to say that the new thing is always something good, nor is it something completely bad. The irony of the Protestant Reformation, as I mentioned before, occurred exactly 75 years after the Roman Catholic decree known as the Papal Bull Statement of 1452 that can be directly linked to the launching of the transatlantic slave trade. And all that to say, also Christian faith deconstruction, right, is kind of like urban gentrification and displacement. They aren't just demolishing homes for the sake of demolishing them. They don't just tear them down and leave a pile of rubble where a house once stood. They build something brand new. Sometimes they may even do major renovations to what is already there. The only difference is, when it comes to Christian faith deconstruction, the previous generation or the previous residents have a voice and enough power to resist and prevent it from happening in their neighborhood, which leads me to my third point. When it comes to Christian faith deconstruction, there is a definite pattern. There is a declaration or the shift that has already begun that gives language and a sense of solidarity around what has been bubbling under the surface. With the followers of the way of Jesus, it was Peter's sermon on Pentecost. With the Great Schism, it was the excommunication of the opposing side. With the Protestant Reformation, it was Martin Luther nailing his 95 Theses to the church door on October 31st, 1517. With the black church, it was Absalom Jones organizing a walkout of St. George's Methodist Episcopal Church in Philadelphia in protest of free blacks of Philadelphia being discriminated against in the church in regards to where they were allowed to sit. With the current deconstruction movement, it has been the writings of folks like Brian McLaren, Rob Bell, rest in peace, Rachel Held Evans, amongst a host of others. In response to the declaration, there has always been a resistance from the old guard that has been followed by a mass departure or fracturing of Christian religious institutions. Present day, we have seen this departure and fracturing most notably when it comes to issues of human sexuality or LGBTQ inclusion. Race conciliation and reckoning with the church's complicity in white supremacy or the dignity and worth of black lives, and patriarchy in the place of women in the church and society at large, or the Me Too movement. Not to mention the disillusionment with the celebrity pastors, the failure to address abuse in the church, and the general resistance to just asking questions. All that to say, given the pattern, it shouldn't come as any surprise that the resistance many of us have experienced, the doubling down on toxicity from the gatekeepers of evangelicalism persists to a nauseating degree. All that to say, I've noticed a lot of folks who have supposedly left and began to deconstruct their faith get stuck. What I mean by that is they continue to put themselves in a position where they can be continually triggered by the gatekeepers of evangelicalism. At some point, you gotta just let them be great. and keep it moving. You can't sit here continuing to visit the Gospel Coalition or Desiring God website or following all these toxic pastors on Twitter and ready with all your comebacks, because then what are you really deconstructing and moving into and building something new? They're going to do what they're going to do, but you don't have to stay there with them in order to keep justifying why you left. This is true of relationships, whether with institutions or interpersonal. If you find yourself locked into gestures that aid you, that locked into a posture of needing to justify yourself, you'll never loosen into gestures that aid you in your journey toward healing and wholeness. That being said, every now and then, some things need to be called out. But I can't help but wonder if some folks have allowed for themselves to just get stuck. They're like an abused or neglected dog confined to a kennel 24/7, 365. Someone opens the door to the kennel, and as much as they want to frolic in the wide open spaces of the park, they remain in the kennel. Y'all, let them be great. Get out of the kennel. Keep it moving. Y'all, again, over the next number of weeks, we are going to be exploring what the deconstruction, reconstruction journey has looked like. For members of the teaching team and laying out a framework or blueprint many of you may find useful in rebuilding your faith in regards to certain issues or aspects of the faith. That you all have also expressed a desire for some guidance of how did you navigate that? It is our desire that it would be a series that yields new and abundant fruit for you when it comes to the divine and you. However, in closing, let me say this. Reconstructing your relationship with the divine is ultimately played out in your relationship with others and the rest of God's good creation. What are you really deconstructing and reconstructing if you just end up with another form of hyper-individualism, cloaked in a jargon of spirituality and connection to the universe? As it says in 1 John 2:7-11, dear friends, I am not writing you a new command, but an old one, which you have had since the beginning. This old command is the message you have heard. Yet I am writing you a new command. Its truth is seen in him and in you, because the darkness is passing and the true light is already shining. Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. Anyone who loves their brother and sister lives in the light, and there is nothing in them to make them stumble. Let me say that again. And there is nothing in them to make them stumble. But anyone who hates a brother or sister is in the darkness and walks around in darkness. They do not know where they are going because the darkness has blinded them. Again, this series is called The Divine in Me. But ultimately, it impacts and it shows and it's demonstrated. That divine in me relationship is demonstrated through how I live and commune with all of you. So who else wants a cookie?
As we close this morning, I invite you to stand. We're going to sing, but there's this, we're going to kind of put two songs together. And there's a song that we've sang that has these words, I will let love find me. I will let love surprise me. I will let love redesign me. And I think this is the space that we are, that we're looking to be in. How do we start to get redesigned by love? How do we allow ourselves the space, the room, to change, to deconstruct, to reconstruct, and do all of that in a space of love for others, for ourselves, for God? So I invite you into this moment with us.
I will let love redesign me. I will let love, I will let love. Sing that together. I will let love find me. I will let love surprise me. I will let love redesign me. I will let love, I will let love. Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant through the trial and the change. One thing remains. One thing remains. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, let's sing that again. Your love never fails. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love, oh, your love. Death in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid. There's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Yeah. In death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. Oh, my debt is paid. There's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Your love never fails and never gives up, never never runs out on me. Your love never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. Sometimes it's hard to believe that God's love doesn't run out, because there are places and times in our lives where, like the psalmist David, we're like, where the heck are you? Where are you, God? We ask this question, why? And I want to point us back to what Cedric said at the end. One way that conversation, that statement could be true is if maybe God's love shows up through our community, through our relationships, both in the way that we provide it to others and that we receive it from other people. So I want to ask us to sing it one more time. And maybe this idea of your love never fails, maybe that is a word to this community, a call to action, a place where we can show up for one another. Let's sing it together. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love. Thank you so much for being here this morning, for singing, for being present for one another. Hope you have a great Sunday, and we will see you next week.